Hi, and welcome to the second module of the Sensitivity Mastery Home Learning Program, which is about setting yourself up for a super successful completion of the program. I will start today with how highly sensitive people make decisions, and then go into showing you how to create success in any area of life, ending with how to apply it to the Sensitivity Mastery Program. Remember last time I talked about fundamental, primary, and secondary choices? I hope you took the time to make your fundamental choices, because today you'll dive into how to make a primary choice that is totally right for who you are and that is an expression of your deepest truth. First, let's look at how highly sensitive people make decisions. According to Dr. Elaine Aron, highly sensitive people like you and me can have a very difficult time with making decisions. But the good news are that in the end we tend to make better choices than non-highly sensitive people. But how come we have more difficulties making decisions? For one thing, as you know from last time, is that we tend to take in more details from the environment. So we simply have more things to consider, more information that we need to process in order to make our decisions. And not only do we take in more data, but we also process deeper. And when we go to all these things, we also come up with the consequences of our decisions, and we need to consider those also much more maybe than a non-highly sensitive person does. So Dr. Aron talks about decision trauma, and I can, as a highly sensitive person, totally relate to that. So I wanted to share with you an example from my own life to illustrate this. And it has to do with shoes. And by the way, I don't have this many shoes as the woman on the picture does, but I still can go into some very deep processing about what kind of shoes I'm gonna wear. So let's pretend that I have to go to my office tomorrow morning, and then I have a party that I need to attend tomorrow night. These days, we're approaching the shortest day of the year. It's winter, just before Christmas. And recently we have had a lot of snow. So when we have a lot of snow, I have to park my car at the bottom of my hill and wade through the snow, which can be very deep and is, to get to my car. Tomorrow, on our pretend day, I will start the morning wading through the deep snow, and of course I will dress for that. But then I also need to think about that I need to go to my office and later to a party. So I'm going to be in 3 different situations, and that could easily mean 3 different pairs of footwear. So what do? So the easy option is, of course, to put on the required snow boots and then carry the others. And of course, then I have to consider the weight and size of each pair of shoes that I bring with me. But it's quite a distance I have to hike through the deep snow, and I have to carry other things, such as my laptop and purse back and forth, as well as groceries on my way back. So then if I decide on just carrying 1 pair of shoes with me that I can use both in office and party tomorrow night, I would also have to consider how much snow I would have to walk through to get from the car to each of the buildings. And considering that, will it be snow as it is here or in the countryside, or will it be slush, because both office and party takes place in town? And then, how well can the shoes handle snow and slush? And what kind of material are they made of? Would they ruin if they get wet? And do they dry easily if they get wet? And then, of course, it's cold and it's winter, so should I put on thick socks to keep my feet warm? Or would that stretch the shoe so much that it would be loose on my foot when I use a thinner sock in a warmer time of the year? And then, this is not even considering the color choices of the shoes to go with whatever clothes I decide to wear. So I tell you what, by now it's so much easier to work from home and cancel the whole party. So in this situation, in this example, what I ended up with is what is known as analysis paralysis. I have analyzed the situation, considered all the factors, deeply processed the different elements, and become unable to make a decision. Uh-oh, not so good. But don't worry, there's help ahead. The main reason we highly sensitive people have difficulties making decisions is, of course, that we are, one, absorbing more information from the environment, and two, processing each piece of information deeply. Because of these two elements, we end up with so many more consequences of our choices, and those all need to be considered and deeply processed as well. The good thing is that this often happens unconsciously, so we don't have to be aware of all of this going on. It can be exhausting and frustrating, as in my shoe example before. But the bad thing is that in some cases, this should not be an unconscious decision. And when I say this, I want you to think back to what I talked about in the last module, that it's very important for us highly sensitive people to live consciously. And talking about this, can you remember why it is so important for us highly sensitive people to make conscious choices and live consciously? There's another reason why it's so important for us to make our decision-making process something we are conscious of. It can make it easier, as we can use our mind consciously to rate importance of the different elements considered. For example, in my shoe deciding process, I know that having to carry everything back and forth through deep snow, along with all the other things I have to carry, is a more important factor to consider than having two different pairs with me, so I would only take one with me. The good thing, and yes, there is a very good thing about this, as I said before, we end up making better choices compared to non-highly sensitive people. Exactly because of all the information we take in and our deep processing of the information, and then the deep processing of the ramifications or consequences of each choice we could make. Think of it as a computer program that that works on predicting the weather for the next few days. The more data the computer has to make that model its prediction with, the higher the accuracy rate, which means the higher the accuracy rate, the more likely we will get the weather that they have told us about in the weather forecast. So more data and deeper processing makes for better decisions. And that's great and awesome and something we should be proud of. And perhaps something other people can respect us for if they don't already. Excuse me. So let's look a little closer at the times when we make conscious choices. When we are faced with processing data in order to make a decision, we are faced with information from two sources. There are the external factors, which is everything outside ourselves. And then there are our internal reality, the internal factors, which is really about what we think, feel, and desire. So when I talk about making choices and making decisions, it's not just logic, it's also taking into consideration your inner reality, your inner truth. When we are contemplating choices, we seek to make the one that will give us the most positive consequences. Each choice we make results in some consequences, but also each choice results in some regrets. So we need to consider not only the consequences we will face, but also the regrets we might end up with if we make this particular choice. So which regrets do we choose as well? What is important to know that because highly sensitive people are so emotionally reactive and process things so deeply, which can lead in some cases to attachments to the very factors that we are considering, the specifics of the different choices, we would need to allow ourselves to mourn the loss of the things we don't get to experience. For us it is real, the sadness, the regret, the sorrow, even if others don't understand it. And what can make our decision making even more complicated is when our decision will have an impact on other people. Because of how we respond so strongly emotionally, a bad choice can upset us a lot, and even more so when we empathically feel another person's upset about our choice. So it's not always being easy being us. So how can we make it easier on ourselves when it comes to making choices and decisions? Well, one thing we need to consider how to handle is if it turns out that we make a wrong choice, because face it, that might happen. The first thing to embrace is that the future is always unknown. We cannot know how the consequences of a choice will turn out until we have lived them. And also sometimes things change with time because you change with time. But most of all, the uncertainty is because you simply cannot predict or control or know the future. So there's always this element of uncertainty. So 2, how will you handle it if the decision turns out to be wrong? So here's some questions you can ask yourself. How serious will it really be? Can you be philosophical about making a mistake? Can you put it in perspective and see the big picture? Will it matter a year, 10 years from now? Or could you possibly trust in the higher power having guided you to make this decision? Even if a choice sometimes feels wrong, Dr. Aron tells us that our well-considered choices typically turn out to have huge benefits in the long run. Number 3, have a way to undo your decision. It can help take the stress out of decision making if we look into our options for undoing our decision. How much would it cost to change the travel date if you go on a trip and want to leave earlier? And if you move to a place, to a new town, and you don't like it there and you move back, is it possible? With how much effort and how much money? And if you want to change work but you're not quite ready to quit it, how about a year sabbatical to explore different job opportunities or career choices? And then make a list of pros and cons. True and tried, this really helps getting clear in your mind when you when you write black on white and see things written down. It kind of gets you a distance and stop all the things just swirling around in your mind where it tends to be overwhelming because all the things are just churning. Should I? What if? So putting it down on paper can give you a lot of clarity and can stop that spinning of your mind and enable you to get the distance to see better. But when you make a list of pros and cons, it is important to include the internal factors. How do you feel? Now remember, highly sensitive people, they have a very strong inner reality, and we need to honor that and not just live from our minds. So even if logically you come up with the logical choice, how would you feel about that? And how would you feel about not getting to do some of the other things? which is where I talked about your regrets of the things you might not get to experience if you make a certain choice. So make more than one list and update it several times in light of new information or how your feelings about it has changed. Number 5, try it on. Now try to imagine yourself living each choice. The more real you can make this particular choice in your imagination, the better you can get a sense of the probable consequences and how you will feel about living those consequences, while still having in mind that life has a tendency to throw you surprises. And number 6, which is probably the one that is most important to me at this time in my life, and I think it's very important to others also. It's the most important thing for us is to have enough time to explore, to consider and to ponder our choices and the possible consequences. In other words, we need to honor our need for deep processing and that it takes time to do that deep processing and to come to a conclusion. Number 7, consider how other people will be affected. The truth is, as highly sensitive people, we often know better than the people around us how they will be affected by our choices. And truth is, we often know what decision will be better for them. That does not mean we should make all the decisions, but it does mean that we should be aware of the other person or people and have their interest at heart. This in no way means that we have to codepend with them. We are still responsible for our own lives as they are for their own lives. But human beings also do not live in a vacuum. We exist in relationships in a social context, and everything we do involves other people. And this is part of the conscious living that I talked about last time. Being aware or considerate of other people while still living our own truth. And number 8, don't take in other people's advice. People advise you from inside their own world, especially non-highly sensitive people, and according to their own interests. This is human nature, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you need to know that when people feel very strongly about something, they usually they express it very strongly. And if you don't have a very strong boundary, somebody else's strongly expressed opinion can overwhelm your opinion and overtake it, so that suddenly you lose your own certainty, or you lose your sense of what was your truth. So here's another place where it's important to have good and strong boundaries, because even if we ask other people for advice, it is still our own truths and not their truths we need to live. And also, if you do ask advice, it is worth considering that it is smarter to ask advice from people who are experts in the fields that you're seeking advice from. It's not quite the correct way of saying it, but sometimes the people closest to you, they are not knowledgeable enough about the thing you seek advice on to actually give you sound, objective advice. So also have that in mind. And then never forget your heart or your intuition. Both of them will lead you right more often than your mind. And as a highly sensitive people, you do have a strong intuition. So learn to trust it. Albert Einstein said, very true, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. I'm just wondering, as I'm reading this, is that maybe one of our tasks as highly sensitive people is to remind people about the intuition and the sacred gift it is, and remind the world that the mind is a servant. It's a great servant, but it's a poor master. And if we make choices from our mind solely, we make bad decisions. And all you have to do is look at the Western society for the last 100 years and to see the truth of that. So I want to return to analysis paralysis for a bit, because it's way too easy to get caught up in it. So if you find yourself in analysis paralysis, here's a few things to do when in the middle of it. Reject perfectionism, number one. Life is never perfect and never will be, and no matter how well we consider our options, we can't know for sure until we're living our choices. Remember what I said before, the future is always unknown. All we can do ever is do our best to make the right choice and then go and experience what happens. Number two, accept the possibility of making the wrong decision. I went over this in detail a couple of slides back, but again, it's mostly about accepting the uncertainty of making the right choice. Own that it might be the wrong one, and plan for the event it might be the wrong one. Number three, often the simplest choice is the best. After having done our due diligence, with exploring our pros and cons, and both externally and internally, and having taken the time to deeply process our options and the consequences of each possible choice, then often the simplest choice is the best, because there is a reason why it is the simplest after all. Think about that. Why would that be? One of the principles I live to, which I have picked up from Ann Wilson Sheff, a woman I very much admire, is when in doubt, don't. It means that until I'm feeling a strong, resounding yes inside myself, I don't change anything. This is the simplest solution because there's no internal fighting going on. Forcing myself to follow my mind while my heart and soul is telling me otherwise. And also, when in doubt, don't. That gives me the time to find the certainty that my choice is the right one. Because I don't have to know right now what is the right choice. I can take my time to decide. And in my decision process, a lot of it goes on sort of in the back of my mind on a very deep level, where I just kind of sit with the things I'm considering. And just kind of every now and then throughout the day, I'll drag it up into my conscious awareness, consider it again, and then send it to the back of my mind. And if I have the patience to stay with this and not only think about it logically, but also how I feel about it, I have always come to a place of a strong yes or a strong no. And it takes courage to allow yourself to take that time, because we so often want to know right now what is the right thing. So honor that you're a highly sensitive person and allow yourself to take as much time as you need or you can in any given situation. So number 4, follow your truth. Now there are 2 parts to this. Follow your truth and follow your truth. Remember, it is your life you're living and nobody else knows what's right for you. Only you know that. So be careful about other people's advice, as I mentioned earlier. And number 5, listen to both your heart and your mind. As Einstein said, the mind is a good servant and can give you a lot of clarity. But in the end, it is your heart that you make the decision. This is how I have lived for many years, and it has never, ever, ever led me wrong. So let's go on to what all of this has to do with sensitivity mastery, and which is the structure of success. The structure of success will show you how to achieve and accomplish anything in any area of life. And it's a skill that everyone can learn. Robert Fritz, a composer, discovered that the process artists use to create a piece of art could be applied to any area of life to achieve success. He called it an advancing structure. He has noticed that most people, however, operated from what he termed an oscillating structure, which means back and forth. So let's take a look at these two different structures. To understand the oscillating structure, imagine yourself standing between two walls. One wall represents low self-esteem, which is the feeling, I don't deserve it. It's too good for me. And the other wall represents the successful attainment of your goal, your primary choice. Now imagine yourself tied with a rubber band around your middle to each of these two walls. Now imagine yourself moving toward your goal. This vision you have of a future is driving you forward. As you move forward to success, the rubber band that is tying you to the wall of low self-esteem is getting more and more stretched. And eventually, it's going to be so stretched that it's going to start contracting again, and it's going to pull you back from your successful attainment of your goal closer to the wall of low self-esteem. And now you're not so happy anymore, because suddenly you're far away from your goal because the low self-esteem has pulled you back. But what happens now, because you also have a rubber band tying you to this wall of success, or the wall that represents the successful completion of your goal, now that is going to stretch. And as it's going to stretch and stretch and stretch, the tension in it increases, and eventually it's going to snap and pull you forward toward your success again. And as you're getting closer and closer to the success, you're going to find yourself happily moving forward. But then the rubber bands that's tying you to the low self-esteem wall are going to pull you back again. So you go forth towards your success and back towards the low self-esteem, and forwards to your success and back to your low self-esteem. Now the sad part in this structure is that you're always going back and forth and never really quite getting to the place of success. And this back and forth thing can happen very quickly. It could take a split seconds, a few minutes, or it can be a process of several years. It is still the same process. And the end point is you never really get the new future you want. So what you need to do is set up a new structure, one that doesn't bounce you back and forth between low self-esteem and success. And this is the structure that artists use to successfully complete each work of art. Robert Fritz calls this an advancing structure, and I use the name the structure of success. And one thing I can promise you is that it works. Now let's go in and take a look at this. Imagine you're a painter. You have an idea, a vision of a painting you wish to paint. And you know what is right now. You have a blank canvas, you have brushes, you have paint, and you have time. These are the exact two things that you need to set up the structure of success. Your vision, what you want to create, and the facts of your starting point. And these two are not the same. It's like holding two different realities in your awareness at the same time. The one you have and the one you want to have. The mind cannot distinguish between what is real and what is make-believe. Plenty of research have shown that, and I'm sure you have experienced in this in your own life. Now we take that capability of the mind and use it for our purpose of creating the future we want to have. So when you have these two different realities in your mind, what you want to be and what is right now, the mind doesn't know that one is real and the other is pretend. So it sends up a lot of tension in you, in your mind, because how can both of them be true at the same time? So there's a discrepancy, a gap, and this gap creates a tension, sort of in your mind, in your subconscious maybe. So what is really important to know here is that nature abhors tension and will always seek to resolve tension. And people don't like tension either. And here's a very simple example to illustrate it. Imagine you're showing up at work and the first person you meet asks you, "Oh, how are you?" The question in itself sets up the tension. Try to be aware of it next time. So when somebody asks you a question, it creates a tension. And our need is to want to resolve tension by answering the question. And if you try to not answer the question, you'll begin to feel uncomfortable by having this tension in the air. And this is true for when you're holding these two different realities in your mind of what is and what you wish to be. So nature and you, maybe the universe, wants to resolve the tension inherent in this model. The tension that comes from holding two different realities in your awareness at the same time. And this tension automatically resolves itself toward your vision coming true. As long as you hold both of them, you will always get closer and closer and closer to seeing your vision becoming your reality. So yes, of course, you have to take the actions and do the things, but as long as you hold the tension, you will be pulled towards success. As you take the action steps to make your life into whatever you want to be, your current reality, the what is going to shift closer and closer and closer to the future you envision. And if you happen to take an action step that turns out to be wrong, that doesn't put you closer to your vision, all that happens is that increases the tension again. So with stronger tension, there's a greater motivational factor of you doing something to make your vision come true. So you can't lose. Now, what you do not see in this model, in this structure of success model, is that nowhere in it is there anything about your low self-esteem and all the reasons for why you shouldn't be successful. We have simply just taken it out. So all that is here now is, what do you wish to create for your future? What do you see? What is it that you want? And then, how is it right now in your life? None of that is emotional. It's just decisions. So you can't lose with this model. You cannot not succeed with this model. Either you get closer to the vision with each action step, or you increase the tension, which will propel you forward again with greater momentum. And I speak from personal experience here, because since I came across this model here, which is more than 10 years ago, I have used this for every single thing I want to create in my future, and it always, always, always works. Like an example here is, of course, creating the Sensitivity Mastery program and creating all the videos and the slideshows and all these things. It's my structure of success is, my vision is to have the Sensitivity Mastery home learning program with all the modules finished. And what I have right now is all my knowledge that I need to organize and structure and make available to you. Now, the beauty of this structure of success model is that you do not have to know before you start what exactly you have to do to get this vision. Your job is to hold the tension between current reality and your future reality. It is God's job, or the universe, or life's job, to figure out how to get you there. The action steps, the next step to take to get you closer to the vision, will always show themselves. Again, I'm speaking from personal experience over the last 15 years. The next step will always be known to you. Even if you have no idea when you start, the way will show itself as long as you can hold the tension. Truly, you don't have to know anything but the next step. And you don't have to know it until right before you're getting ready to take that next step. So yes, it requires a lot of faith and trust. But I have learned to trust implicitly in this process. It works in all areas of life. So let's take a look at what we need to set up, or what you need to set up your structure of success. The first part of this is your vision, which is your goals and your primary choice. First of all, you must be able to recognize it when you get there. Otherwise, how would you know when you have arrived? It is important to know that the clearer your vision, the sooner you will get to see it come true. And you probably know this from the law of attraction, I'm sure. That the clearer picture you have of what you want, the sooner the universe can have you meet up with it. But also, the clearer the vision, the stronger the tension. And the greater the tension, the stronger the pull toward your vision. And it also has to be realistic enough that you can believe it's possible. Because if you can't believe it's possible, then it's just a good idea, but you have no belief that it really could come true, which you need to believe in order for your mind to see that your pretend reality is equally valid with your actual reality. Again, remember, the mind can't tell the difference between real and make-believe. And you use that to set up a structure that will pull you towards seeing your vision become manifest. But the tension only works if you believe that the future is possible. And you must also have what I call unbending intent. So what is unbending intent? When you want something, it starts out as a thought. Then that thought, that idea gains an emotional charge. The more you want the something, the stronger you feel about it. And when strong enough, your feelings have become a desire. And when the desire is really strong, you make a decision to have that thing. And when you have made that decision, on the deepest level possible inside yourself, to have this thing in your life, to manifest it, you have what is known as unbending intent. If you think of it energetically, it is one way to think about it. When you make a decision on such a deep level, you actually change who you are. and you know that the universe sends back to you what you put out. So the universe mirrors your internal reality. So when your internal reality changes, the universe will reflect that. Here's a very easy example from my own life. When my son was young, I had decided I wanted to get him a tricycle. And I was just holding it in my mind that there was to be a tricycle in our lives. And I didn't really do anything about it. Suddenly one day my friend calls up and asks if I want to have a tricycle because she has one. So the universe brought that tricycle to me. In this case, I actually didn't have to do any action steps except just holding the tension. But this is how it works. When your inner reality changed because you have made such a deep decision, then you have unbending intent, and the universe will give you what you unbendingly intend to have in your life. Unbending intent happens when you and the universe come into perfect alignment about getting you what you want. And the universe, as we both know, and I have discovered this for real, really wants you to have everything you desire. All you have to do is desire it so strongly that you make this decision and that it shall be in your life, and you will find the way to make it happen. And then you change yourself and you become a different person that has that thing you desire inside as part of your inner reality, your energetic reality, and the universe reflects it back to you. Unbending intent means you have decided that it will be so, and so it happens. Now, the other part of it is that you need to know what is right now, your current reality. As amazing as it seems, people have more difficulties with this part of setting up the structure of success, according to Robert Fritz. I can easily imagine it to be true because people, you and me and everybody, use all kinds of mind games to avoid facing their lives, such as minimization, wishful thinking, and denials, and false modesty. So in order to set up the tension in this structure of success, you actually have to get rid of all minimization, wishful thinking, denials, and false modesty, just everything. People's opinions about you, the people-pleasing part of you. Get rid of all that and just get back to what are the exact facts about you and who you are and what skills you have or whatever else you need to know, or what are relevant for setting up the structure of success for this particular thing you want to see true in your life. This part is much more challenging than it may seem to see yourself and your life crystal clear, to not avoid something just because it makes you uncomfortable. The truth is, you can only change facts. If you change a denial, you only get another denial. If you change wishful thinking, you only get another wishful thinking, etc., etc. So when it comes to your time for setting up your structure of success for sensitivity mastery, have this in mind. You need to be completely honest about the facts of your life as it is, both positively and negatively. And that includes both your inner and outer reality. One last thing you need to know before you're ready to apply yourself to your primary choice of sensitivity mastery and your vision is the 3 stages of success. These are also from Robert Fritz, and something he learned from studying artists and their creative process, including his own. The beginning stage, the seed stage, is characterized by lots of enthusiasm and motivation and eagerness to start working on your vision. It is definitely a high. And it's such a high, it can actually even become an addiction, like, I don't know if you have heard the term workshop junkies, But there are people who keep going to different workshops because every time they go to a workshop, it's another beginning, and you get this high, this rush. So I learned very early on, yes, I would go to workshops and get this high and enthusiasm and motivation to take what I learned and apply it. But the real work happened once that high wore down. And you just get down to actually doing the work of implementing what you have learned or taking the steps. Now, this part is where you really get into the work part of making it happen. And you won't have the enthusiasm and the high and eagerness to carry you forward here. This is a place where it's very important to just hold the tension, because this is where the tension really, holding the tension really comes into effect, where it pulls you forward step by step by step by step. And then finally comes the completion states, where you actually reach your vision, you see it come true. And it can be both a high and a low. A high, of course, because you have arrived and it's time to celebrate. But also low, because it might leave an empty place in your life. So now that you know everything about setting yourself up for success, it's time for you to apply it to sensitivity mastery. Here's how you do it. First, I want you to print out the structure of success and the reality is forms. And I've also included a story I wrote about an amusing example of unbending intent in my life that really shows how powerful it is to have unbending intent. It's called Three Mice and Gitte. So reality is, it's an exercise I invented more than 20 years ago to help me dig up the underlying truths of what I could only perceive on the surface of myself. So I used this when I was not getting the results. I wasn't seeing my vision coming true. And I wanted to know, well, why not? What is it that I'm not seeing in myself that prevents me from getting to where I want to go? So I start each sentence with the words, reality is. And this is kind of a key that I drop out of my mind and into a deeper level of awareness to pull up a deeper truth. I start with the words, reality is, and then allow the rest of the sentence to flow out of me without thinking about it. Sometimes when I start, I have nothing coming right away, so I just write, reality is. Nothing's coming, then I go to the next sentence, reality is. Listen, wait, reality is. And usually, if not right away, then by the third or fourth time around, then things start flowing out. Sometimes, yeah. The point is that you keep on writing reality is, listen inside of yourself to see what's coming up, and then go on to the next reality is and see if you can get something deeper. And I'm still using this exercise. And every time I do, I always dig up a deeper truth. And a truth is a fact. And you need the facts in order to be able to change yourself and to change your life. Otherwise, you just have wishful thinking, as I talked about before. The tension requires the actual facts. And sometimes the facts are some we need to dig up from inside ourselves. So here's an example I found from many years ago when I was looking into why I was not allowing myself to be successful in my work. Reality is, it's better if I hold back on success. Reality is, I can't allow myself to succeed. Reality is, I can't succeed. I simply can't allow myself to succeed. Reality is, I can't succeed because... Reality is, I can't succeed. Reality is, I shouldn't succeed. Reality is, I shouldn't be a success. Reality is I shouldn't be a success because people need me. Reality is I shouldn't succeed because then I betray people's trust in me. Reality is I shouldn't succeed because I let people down if I become a success. Reality is I can't allow myself to succeed. Reality is I can't allow myself to succeed. Reality is I can't allow myself to succeed. Reality is I really shouldn't succeed. Reality is I really shouldn't be a success because people depend on me. Reality is I really shouldn't allow myself to succeed because then I would betray. And on and on and on and on. As you might have noticed, none of this is logical. And most of our self-sabotaging beliefs and behaviors, they are not logical. But we still need to see the truth and the facts of them and work with them so that we get another fact. So a lot of times this turns really, really emotional. Because as we dig deeper and deeper until to looking into what is our deepest truth, what is our deepest fact, a lot of these self-sabotaging beliefs, they are based on a strong emotional experience in the past where we have repressed our feelings in order to be able to continue with our lives. So this case here I shared, eventually I went into some very deep emotional healing. And if that happens to you, please stay with it. No matter how illogical it is, trust that these are old feelings that need to come out. And as they come out, you free yourself to create a better life. Now, before you start using this exercise, look at the table for the structure of success that you also printed out. I want you to write down the elements of how you see yourself when you have mastered your sensitivity. That is, the elements of your vision, your primary choice of becoming a master of your sensitivity. Who are you then? What will you do? What will your life be like? And what about other people in your life and your work? So keep going and get clearer and clearer and clearer, going through every single aspect of your life. And then for each part of your vision, write down exactly how it is today. No minimization, no denial, no wishful thinking, no false modesty, just the actual fact. And if you're not sure, go back and do the reality is exercise. And I want to remind you that as a highly sensitive person, you need to take your time making a decision. So keep coming back to your structure of success. Change it as you need to do every single time until your vision is one of unbending intent and you are crystal clear on the facts you need to change. You will usually recognize that by this strong yes, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to create for myself inside yourself. So once you've done this, now you're ready to begin the work on creating boundaries, because now you have created the tension in the structure of success that will ensure your success. And you know about the hard work stage, that is not so much fun, but something you have to go through to come to the final success. So next time we'll begin to look at boundaries.